Nature operates on a basis of duality, day and night, light and darkness, good and evil, and so on. So wherever there are some really good products, always expect some really bad ones too. Besides, if there weren't any bad cars, then how can we appreciate the good ones? Today, we will take a look at the 10 worst of the worst cars in American history. We surely do have a lot to talk about here. So without further ado, let's dive into this interesting video immediately. Coming in at the 10th spot, we have the 1971 Chevrolet Vega. When General Motors announced the Chevy Vega for the 1971 model year, car enthusiasts were initially eagerly awaiting the car with high hopes. When the car finally debuted, everything General Motors promised to deliver seemed to be there. The Vega, at first, looked like a well-built, stylish, cheap, compact car. Motor Trend magazine even awarded Vega its Car of the Year award for 1971. However, things started falling apart for the Vega soon enough. The most significant problem was that Vega's new aluminum block engine was prone to a kind of self-destructive behavior. In the sense that if owners didn't meticulously watch and maintain the coolant level, the engine cylinder walls would overheat. The overheating would also heat up and expand the fuel tank, causing significant fuel leakage. There were even some reports of car fires related to this very issue. The complaints got so loud that by 1972, Chevrolet had recalled 500,000 Vegas. Moving on to the number 9 spot, we have the 1979 to 1985 Oldsmobile Supreme. Another one by General Motors. There was absolutely nothing supreme about the 1979 Oldsmobile Supreme. In fact, the Oldsmobile undoubtedly had the honor of being one of the most popular cars of the time to feature one of the worst engines ever made. The Oldsmobile featured a V6 231 cubic inches, 3.8-liter engine, which just couldn't handle the high compression rate required of diesel engines, coupled with the dreadful turbo-hydromatic 200 transmission system. Worse still, the car was rushed into production, all in a bid to save cost. Little wonder, then, that when General Motors submitted the Oldsmobile to the California Vehicle Resources Board for testing and certification, it failed the testing woefully, because the vehicle suffered major engine and transmission problems before the testing was even completed. That was quite embarrassing for General Motors. The number 8 spot is quite an exciting one, because we are not just talking about a single car model here. We are instead talking about any Crosley car model made from 1946 to early 1949. Believe it or not, but Crosley, a brand name more commonly synonymous with manufacturing radios, did produce cars from 1939 to the early 1950s. Perhaps, the brand should have just stuck with building their radios, because all the cars they produced between 1946 to early 1949 were plagued with some serious engine problems, just like their two colleagues we've already discussed earlier. Their so-called Cobra engines were made of stamp sheet metal instead of the typical cast iron or aluminum blocks and cylinder heads. This unorthodox method of building an engine had worked well during the Second World War for small engines. But when they were utilized in the Crosley vehicles, the cars suffered severe overheating issues. From 1946 to early 1949, Crosley tried their very best to go right back to the drawing board by introducing a traditional cast iron replacement engine in 1949. But it was too late for them. The damage had already been done, so much so that Crosley was forced to end its automobile ambitions just a few years later, and of course, returned to doing what they knew how best to do, producing radios, not cars. The story of the car on our number 7 spot is quite a funny one, the Smith Flyer or Briggs & Stratton Flyer. This car is so small in size that it looks more like an 18th century go-kart than a proper car. The Smith Flyer hit the market in 1915. And the car was truly an amazingly bizarre one. To start with, the car makers used wood. Yes, you heard me right, wood for the car's body and frame. Secondly, the Flyer had no form of suspension whatsoever, only relying on wood's natural, flexible nature to dampen the ride. Most bizarrely enough, the Flyer came equipped with 5 wheels, 4 at the corners, and a 5th drive wheel. Needless to say then, the car was a complete disaster. And there was absolutely nothing flying about the Smith Flyer, not even close. Perhaps, the car would have been better named the Smith Crawler instead. At the number 6 spot, we have any V8-equipped 1981 Cadillac. If you had ever purchased a V8-powered Cadillac in 1981, then you must have been very unlucky indeed. as Cadillac just decided to jump into the computer age overnight by developing a multiple displacement system for the car's 368 cubic inch L61 V8 engine. The concept was only good on paper, but practically useless, as the computer system was designed to activate electric solenoids to disengage the valvetrain on 2 or 4 cylinders of the car to reduce fuel consumption when the car was on the move. But the problem was that the computing technology available in 1981 was not fully developed enough, like what we have today. So, the computer system ceaselessly struggled to find the right cylinders to disengage or keep activated. Hence, the Cadillac's drivers complained bitterly of constant surging and stumbling. The engine was also nothing to write home about. Cadillac tried to fix the issue with over a dozen software updates, but they never seemed to find a lasting solution to this major headache. Hence, the brand was forced to discontinue both the engine and the computer system after just one model year. We are now halfway there at number 5, which is the Ford Edsel. Before Edsel's launch, there was so much hype about the car, all thanks to Ford's aggressive marketing strategy that promised the public a new wonder cars. But when the Edsel finally debuted in late 1953, there was absolutely nothing wonderful about the car. What the public got was essentially an uglier version of the Mercury model. The vast majority of car enthusiasts forever condemned Edsel's entire body style and designs as being too unattractive for their liking. They also echoed the Edsel's engine's poor fuel economy. The Edsel sold so poorly that Ford had to end the entire Edsel division in 1960 after losing a couple $100 million, which was really big money in 1960 dollars. The Edsel deservedly makes this list, as it will always be remembered as a car that sank a reputable automaker's car division after 3 model years. At the number 4 spot, we are honored to present to you the Pontiac Aztec. Continuing the theme of a car that ended a reputable automaker division is the Pontiac Aztec. The car's widely reviled body style and overall design were simply a result of trying too hard to make a car's design multifaceted while spending too little money on achieving that aim. The Aztec is a textbook example of an oddly proportioned car, which was unnecessarily too tall, unusually narrow, with unfittingly small tires to complete the dreadful look. The Aztec could best be described as a car that tried to do everything and ended up doing nothing at all. We are almost at the end with number 3, the GMX body platform 1979 to 1985. General Motors is at it again. This should be the 3rd or 4th time a car from a reputable automaker is honoring our list today. And the reason is very simple. General Motors was poorly managed in the late 1970s and early 1980s, which resulted in the company cutting corners when it came to the quality of their cars, and rushing poorly developed cars to the market with bad engines, bad transmissions, poor and dangerous braking systems, and overall unappealing body designs. All these issues, among many others, bedeviled the X-body platform. Despite all its shortcomings, the car still managed to achieve a feat that it will always be remembered for. It massively helped to tarnish the image of General Motors for several years to come. At our number 2 spot, we present to you the 1982 Cadillac CMAR-1. For the 1982 model year, Cadillac, for whatever reasons best known to their management, decided to take the compact front-wheel drive styling used by models such as the cheap Chevy Cavalier and dress it up for sale as a Cadillac. The result was nothing more than a poorly built, poorly designed, and poorly powered optioned-out Cavalier, which Cadillac even labeled a luxury ride, named it the CMAR-On, and then sold for a premium price. Of course, there was absolutely nothing luxurious about the CMAR-On. Perhaps a more befitting label for this model that almost killed Cadillac, just like the Aztec discussed earlier, which is believed by many to have killed Pontiac, would have been a thorny ride. And now, the moment we all have been waiting for. We are finally honored to present to you the number 1 worst of the worst, the Dale. The Dale, named after the designer, Dale Cliff, was marketed by the 20th Century Motor Car Company from 1974 to 1978. This car is at the number 1 spot on our list because it was not even a car per se, but a complete fraud perpetrated on unsuspecting American investors. The Dale was marketed as the solution to surging fuel prices and shortages of the mid-1970s. The car was a projected 3-wheeled, extremely lightweight car. The Dale marketers even claimed that the Dale would run over 80 miles per gallon of fuel, all thanks to its small sub-1-liter engine. As expected, this marketing scam drew a lot of public interest in the company. The owner of 20th Century Motor Car Company, Liz Carmichael, even claimed to have enough massive capital to chase away other big competitors and take over the entire American car industry. Soon, Carmichael began selling shares of stock in her car company, claiming an expected sales of over 300,000 in the first 2 years. As investors kept buying the fraudulent shares, Carmichael kept smiling at the bank. However, the company continued delaying the production of the car, while they continued selling only shares, raising some serious concerns and suspicions among the company's investors. At the end of it all, the company didn't even manufacture a single working car. Let that sink in for a moment. And when some dedicated investigative journalists and relevant U.S. government agencies started investigating the company for fraud, Carmichael disappeared into thin air and went into hiding. The company and the whole scandal simply burst like a balloon after Carmichael's disappearance. Luck, however, ran out for Carmichael, and she was eventually caught in 1989 and sentenced to 18 months in prison for defrauding investors. What an interesting story to close off quite an interesting video.